Good evening. I'm Peter Bartinik, a board-certified civil trial attorney practicing law here in Connecticut. One question I get asked all the time by clients shortly after they're in a car crash, it's the other person's fault, they're going to the doctor, they're receiving medical bills. The question that gets asked all the time is how do they get their medical bills paid? And does the defendant have an obligation to pay the medical bills? And so let me go through this question. First, let's go through the question of, you've got medical bills. Does the defendant have the obligation to pay those medical bills? Okay, and then after we talk about that, we'll talk briefly about how do you get your medical bills paid when you're in a car crash? Okay, first of all, you've got medical bills. The defendant is at fault. It's their fault. But even though you know it's their fault, and even though their insurance company knows it's their fault, there's no obligation to pay the medical bills now. In other words, no court has decided yet that it is the defendant's fault. So in the beginning stages of any claim, even though it's clear whose fault it is, there's no legal obligation for the defendant to pay the medical bills. Now remember, that means there's no obligation today. When the case is over, whether it's through a jury verdict or a settlement, then the medical bills will be paid by the defendant. But in the meantime, on day one after the crash, there's no obligation from the defendant to pay the medical bills. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, how do you get your medical bills paid? Number one, if you do have health insurance, you submit your medical bills through your health insurance company. That's how you get your medical bills paid. Now that might seem unfair to your health insurance company, and in one sense it is, but remember, you have paid health insurance premiums for those benefits. So you've paid for those benefits. Why shouldn't you receive them? There's nothing unfair for your health insurance company to pay for your medical bills when you've paid premiums for that health insurance. Okay. Now also remember, in many instances, your health insurance company will have a right to be reimbursed at the end of the civil case, at the end of the personal injury case, from the money you receive from the defendant. So the ultimate loss will be borne by the defendant, not your health insurance company most of the time. Another thing to look at to get your medical bills paid is Medpay on your policy. You may have medical payments on your auto policy. A lot of times people have Medpay and they just don't realize it, and they go a period of time without having medical care, or they end up paying the bills in some other way. But check your auto policy to see if you have Medpay. You'll see it on the declarations page. Medpay is insurance that pays medical bills from a car crash up to the amount of the policy, regardless of whether it's your fault or someone else's. Other ways to get your medical bills paid while your case is pending is self-pay. If you can pay the medical bills out of pocket, and then you would get reimbursed at the end of the case. Some doctors will also treat you with a promise that you will pay them at the end of the case. That's we lawyers will call that a letter of protection. We will promise the doctor that when the case is over, their bills will be protected and that they will be paid first at the end of the case before you get your money. So that's the long and short of it. Shortly after the car crash, before the case is finalized, there's no obligation on the defendant to pay the medical bills on day one, but eventually they'll have to pay. In the meantime, your bill should be submitted to your health insurance. I hope this information helps. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.